Good evening, everyone. We will start in a couple of minutes.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Libby. How are you?
I'm good, Dr. Vilanka.
Wonderful. Good evening, Dr. Vinod. Welcome, Dr. Sriram.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Good evening, all.
Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Apte. Welcome.
Good evening. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's really nice to be here.
Good evening, Radhika ji. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Yogesh ji. Good evening, everyone.
Dr. Sriram, we are at 5 o'clock. Shall we get started?
Yes, please, we can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, greetings, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone joining us from all over the world. On behalf of the entire team of C20 Working Group on Sustainable and Resilient Communities, Climate, Environment, and Net Zero Targets, and the UNESCO Chair on Experiential Learning for Sustainable Innovation and Development at Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, I, Dr. Yogesh Velankar, welcome all the distinguished speakers and participants for today's session entitled Fostering Educational Processes and Community Engagement, Dialogues for a Sustainable World. Today, we are fortunate to have experts from UNESCO, civil society organizations, and academia to discuss the challenges and opportunities in the areas of climate resilience and social justice, environmental sustainability, net zero emission management, and compassion-driven inclusive education. We will also have deliberations on educational processes and community engagement mechanisms to devise sustainable and resilient solutions leading to community empowerment. But first, let us begin the session with a prayer. I request our team member Vaishak to initiate the prayer. Vaishak.
ध्यायामो धवलावगुण्डनवती तेजोमयीं नैष्टिकीं स्निग्धापाङ्गविलोकिनीं भगवतीं मन्दस्मितश्रीमुखी वात्सल्यामृतवर्षिणीं सुमधुरं सङ्कीर्तनालापिनीं श्यामाङ्कीं मधुसिक्तसूक्तिम् अमृतानन्दात्मिकाम् ईश्वरी.
Now, it is my pleasure to invite the moderator for today's session, Dr. Sriram Devanathan. Dr. Sriram currently serves as Principal, School of Engineering, Bangalore, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. He is also the coordinator for the Compassion-Driven Approaches for Sustainable and Resilient Communities thematic area of the C20 Sustainable and Resilient Communities Working Group. Dr. Sriram, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yogesh. Good evening, Om Namah Shivaya, Namaskar to all. And it's a pleasure indeed to be here. Over the past several months, I have to say I've been extremely privileged to meet with social workers, development specialists, and those on the field and really with their hands dirty and immersed in all the grassroots level issues and problems, who have been able to bring wonderful, wonderful insights, sometimes very startling for me, and sometimes definitely very innovative in terms of the solutions that they suggest. But it has been a wonderful eye-opening experience in the last few years. And I definitely want to place on record the privilege that I feel and the gratitude to our C20 chair, Mata Amritanandamayi Devi. With that said, I will not speak much right now. I'm only going to take up the role of introducing all the main speakers for the day. I will do it in one stretch so that later on we can go from one talk to the other in a seamless way. And then we can follow it up with a panel discussion of sorts, question and answers, which could be either from the panel or from the audience as well. Without further ado, let me just start with our first speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Manisha Sudhir. She is currently the provost in Amrita University, Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, and she has a portfolio which includes strategic initiatives, research and innovation, interdisciplinary programs, and AI plus X, all of these within our university. She's also the Dean of International Programs and for the School of Sustainable Development as well. She's got many roles. She's also the director and a professor at Amrita Center for Wireless Networks and Applications. Finally, she's also the UNESCO chair on experiential learning for sustainable innovation and development. And this chair is, of course, the key platform and foundation for today's event. In the last 2 years, specifically from 2019 to 21, Stanford University in the US has ranked Dr. Manisha as one among the global top 2% scientists in the networking and telecommunication field. Additionally, she leads the Live in Labs program, a multidisciplinary experiential learning program through which she has guided students on more than 150 projects in 22 Indian states, helping 60,000 people in the rural communities. She is the India coordinator of the C20 working group on sustainable and resilient communities, with focus on climate, environment, and net zero targets during India's G20 presidency. It is a pleasure to welcome Dr. Manisha, and now over to you, Dr. Manisha.
Thank you. Thank you, Sridham. Thank you, everybody. Very happy to join this esteemed panel. Give me a second to actually upload my presentation. Thank you, everybody. It's my privilege to be part of the C20 working group, especially with one of the most important working group called Sustainable and Resilient Communities, Climate, Environment, and Net Zero Targets. And the most important thing is, it's a privilege of India's Civil 20 that Srimata Amrutandamayi Devi is chairing the C20, and this Amma's vision is helping us to understand what are the real needs in the communities and how we can develop strategies which would help us to progress in a positive approach to build peace and justice. So as part of the complete work in the Sustainable and Resilient Communities group, the way we have looked at is how we understand from our grassroots level that what are the experience that all the CSOs have and how we can learn from them and empower ourselves and the other stakeholders. So from the day one itself, the idea was to learn from the different CSOs who are working, and at the same time also from the government officials, all the NGOs, CSOs, the working groups, etc., working in the communities, and understand what are the culture they have learned, what are the values, the challenges, the systems, etc., by engaging with each one of them, and then build this particular group itself. So the working group's objective was on identify gaps in building sustainable and resilient communities, in-depth engagement to unveil the existing policies, strategies, interventions, and solutions, solicit recommendations and proposed pathways, and collate and showcase best practices, thus to achieve the Vasudhaiva Kudumbam, one earth, one family, one future. The group, for us to actually go dive deep, it is a very elaborate area, very diverse. So we have decided to divide into 4 sub-themes, which are climate and resilience and social justice, environmental sustainability, net zero emission management, compassion-driven approaches. As of today, we have engaged with more than 700 plus CSOs from 60 countries. And as you all know that we are almost coming to the culmination of the G20 presidency in India, and policy dimensions has started writing, and the final ones are getting ready. So to engage with CSOs, different modalities we have used, where we have actually provided opportunity for submission of policy recommendations. And there were submissions with respect to best practices, which CSOs have implemented. We also have developed different campaigns like Global Seed Ball campaign to protect nature, to restore nature, and surveys for net zero emission management in G20 and invited nations, CSO surveys, extraordinary stories about acts of compassion. And in each of these things, we have done a lot of different and roundtables. One of them is building resilience in a climate changing, where in this area itself, we had more than 35 plus events with 160 plus speakers from 30 countries, and 80 plus countries have participated. Each of those things, it's not only that the SRC group has worked alone, it worked with other groups also, which are working groups under G20, like the Think 20, T20. So we looked at collaborating events, we looked at actually exchange information between the working groups and sub-teams to build these policy dialogues actually. And there were roundtables with respect to technology integration, finance and adoption. Community visits was one of the major things, because that is one major change under Indian presidency. The Civil 20 chair has brought in, where the multidisciplinary community-centric engagement has been brought in, where we were able to go dive deep into the community, work with the community, and to bring their voices into the C20 and G20. Also, looked at what are the critical gaps and policy entry points for several areas like strengthening sustainable and resilient communities, business and its interface with triple bottom line sustainability, net zero emission targets, energy storage, policy roundtable with compassion as the driving force for volunteerism and civic engagement, international symposium on research and development of autonomous and mobility, and policy roundtable on transitioning to renewable energy and integrated grids. And as I said that this is one of the major things which is called C Chaupal, compassion driven Chaupal, where there are like more than 1,900 plus villages has been engaged fully from the different states of the country to tell what do they envision as sustainable and resilient community, where are the gaps, where do we need to strengthen. So we were able to actually bring up the information from the grassroots level to the topmost as the policy level people, also multi-level experts also. So we engage all at different levels of multi-stakeholders from multiple dimensions to bring out the policy dialogues. Not only that, to understand the climate change and impact, we actually have engaged in multiple visits to landslide prone areas, to flood prone areas, drought prone areas, different areas to understand what are the effects they are going through with respect to the changing climate. At the same time, how the resilience need to be built in these areas. So we had conducted a large conclave at Sikkim, where we have 80 plus speakers from 22 countries with 2,000 plus participants, plus 30 countries have participated. And it has 4 roundtable sessions. And also along with that, it had the major one was the presentation of the udaharans, which is the best practices from the grassroots level, and also dedicated roundtable on indigenous practices. And it was such a in-depth conclave where people from this multiple country has brought out what are the best practices, what are the gaps, what are the challenges, which helped us actually take forward, which led to actually a collaboration with different grassroots levels, where memorandum of understanding has been signed with 11 CSOs for future working. So it's not finishing with the C20 work alone. And along with that, we never left out the community. We even have parallel training sessions spanning 2 days for capacity building with 200 plus participants on sustainable development, disaster resilience, energy awareness. This we will be continuing and taking forward to globally to different countries, to take forward and to bring in the change from the grassroots level, and to build actually build the teams for changes and build the champions who will be trained and who will actually work with the communities from their area itself. So I think the youth and the students and faculty becomes one of the major group who will be working towards this from the different parts. In udaharans, the best practices, we had received more than 100 plus udaharans, extensive review and evaluation process done by the international jury, presentation by 30 plus CSOs, and examples of scalable pathways for building sustainable and self-reliant communities has been brought in. And this has been integrated. Their best practices and their policies, their procedures has been considered for the policy recommendations to the G20. Global Seed Bank campaign initiated by the Civil 20 chair, Sri Mata Amridandamayi Devi. And this has now become a very large program with more than 1 million seed balls. At today, we have actually reached out to 11 states, and this has now gone to different countries in USA, Europe, Africa, etc. So it has been globally going so that we can bring in biodiversity and also the nature preservation. And a lot of students and also the community is really engaged in bringing back the restoring the nature. So it's very important to see that what is lacking today. And it's very important that, today's event of fostering educational process and community engagement is a very pertinent topic to look into it. If you look at what are the gaps in sustainable and resilient communities, even today, billions are at the bottom of the pyramid. And if you see that communities still remain as islands, and lack of engagement among stakeholders make us unaware of what is happening in these communities. It leads to a disparity in the information and requirements of building sustainable and resilient communities. It is leading to lack of community level champions to realize the gaps and build solutions. On one side, if you see that there is a widening of gap happening. Why? Because the science and technology are fast advancing, but the quality of life and environment are rapidly degrading. Future generations are unaware of this gap, and because of that, we don't have champions who are having the motivation to build the sustainable and resilient community. So the question to the educational institutions are, who are we building? Who is the future generation? We are the people who are actually trying to bring up the future generation. How are we going to change this? And how do we bring up champions who are capable to do sustainable and resilient buildings? In this regard, to bring in the change in the educational systems, Amrita has used a specific vision, mission and goals, which has been brought up by our Chancellor, Amma, where her focus is on education for life along with education for living, where what what she has told us is every faculty, every student in the educational institution should be able to impart a culture of the heart, a culture based on enduring values and inner strength. How do you build that? What program you will bring in? What ecosystem you will bring in to build this? Then your research, your compassion-driven research need to be brought in, because rather than only thinking about publication projects and patents, how do you use the research to serve the lowest and most vulnerable strata of society? This is very important. And now, rather than thinking about only us, then remaining as island, how do we work for global challenges? How do you bring in a global impact? So we need to solve global challenges. We cannot do by standing as an island. We have to collaborate between the cultures on the East and the West, so that we bridge the division, we understand what are the needs on both the sides, and then use our capabilities and build. This is the three main focus at Amrita, which has helped us to actually work deeper into the communities and build students and faculty who are able to have a compassionate heart to provide solutions, to build solutions which will help in building the communities as sustainable and resilient ones. I'll just reshare. I think when I shared, I didn't share the video. So just a second.
ഞാൻ ചെറുപ്രായത്തിൽ ഗ്രാമത്തിലാണ് ജനിച്ചത്. 1000 വീടിനോട് ഒരു പൈപ്പ് വെള്ളം. രാവിലെ വെള്ളത്തിൽ നിന്നാൽ രാത്രി വരെ നിന്നാൽ ഒരു കുടം വെള്ളം കിട്ടുള്ളൂ. അപ്പോൾ കിട്ടുക തന്നെയില്ല. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് മുന്നോട്ട് പോയത്. അങ്ങനെ വളർന്ന് ഞാനായതാണ്. ഇപ്പോഴും വണ്ടി യാത്ര ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ റോഡിൽ എവിടെയെങ്കിലും പൈപ്പ് പൊട്ടി വെള്ളം പോകുന്നതുകൊണ്ട് ശരീരത്തിന് വ്യക്തമാർന്ന് വന്ന പോലെ തോന്നും. വല്ലാണ്ട് വിഷമം തോന്നും. ഓടിച്ചെന്ന് ആരെങ്കിലും കണ്ടിരുന്ന് ശരിയാക്കിയെങ്കിൽ അങ്ങനെ വിഷമിച്ച് നിന്ന് ഇങ്ങനെ അങ്ങോട്ടും ഇങ്ങോട്ടും ശ്രദ്ധിക്കും. അപ്പം എന്താണ്, എനിക്ക് ഇല്ലാണ്ട് വളർന്നുകൊണ്ടാണ് ആ ഭാവം കൂടുതലും എനിക്ക് ഫീൽ ചെയ്ത് ഉണ്ടാകുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ അതുപോലെ നമ്മൾ വെള്ളത്തിൻ്റെ കാര്യം എപ്പോഴും ഇല്ല വെള്ളം, എന്നാലും അതൊരു അവയർനെസ് കൊണ്ടിരുന്ന അപ്പോൾ ആ ഇല്ലായ്മ കൊണ്ട് നമുക്കത് മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ പറ്റി. യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റിയിലെ കുഞ്ഞുങ്ങളെ, ഈ ലോകമുഴുക്കുള്ള യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റിയിലെ കുഞ്ഞുങ്ങളെ പറ്റുന്ന രീതിയിൽ 2 മാസത്തേക്കെങ്കിലും ഗ്രാമങ്ങളിൽ ഇൻറ്റേൺഷിപ്പിനായിട്ട് അവരെ അയക്കണം. അപ്പോൾ അവർ അവിടെ പോകുമ്പം തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും പാവപ്പെട്ടവരെ കാണാനും അവർക്ക് അങ്ങനെ പേപ്പർ ചെയ്യിക്കുന്നതൊക്കെ നല്ലതാണ്. അവിടെ ദുഃഖങ്ങളൊക്കെ കേട്ടിട്ട് അപ്പോൾ പാവപ്പെട്ടവർ കാണാനും അവരുടെ മനസ്സിലെ കാരുണ്യം ഉണരും. അപ്പോൾ എന്തെടുക്കുമ്പോഴും അവർ ഈ ആഡംബരം എടുക്കുമ്പോൾ ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ളവർ ലോകത്തിലുണ്ടെന്ന് ചിന്ത കൂടി അവർക്ക് വരും.
This is the most important thing what Amma has said, like, have the focus where we make our students are able to understand what is happening in the ground reality, how the impoverished rural villages are, and based on those and issues and problems what they face, how do you develop solutions? And thus the Living Labs program at Amrita has been brought in as a multidisciplinary theory into practice program that facilitate the research, development and deployment of sustainable solutions for current challenges faced by rural communities in India. And they work in multiple areas in the community with energy, environment, water, health, livelihood, skill development, several of them. So what is happening is each of the grand challenge is taken up by the Living Labs program to build a sustainable solution by the students and faculty along with the community. So they learn these grand challenges in the classroom, they experiment in the laboratory, and they experience in the village, which will help them to embrace the culture of that community. And based on that, they will gather the insights and engage with the community, which will lead them to innovate and implement sustainable solutions. And this is the major thing where, how do you bring in an academic framework which will be rooted in compassion-driven research and value-based education, which will help us to provide the experience, the engagement, to embrace and empower by bringing in the teaching and learning, different teaching and learning process like peer-to-peer or participatory or problem-based, community dimensions like socio-cultural, economic, political, and approaches and models of technology, business models, change models, social science. Thus, helping the students to build a community empowerment, frugal innovation, and sustainable solution. Thus, they get wholesome learning and we build the self-reliant communities actually. This has helped us to actually build different projects the major thing is it's not that the projects were built. The major thing is students were able to participately build these solutions and make a plan how it will be a sustained solution and how it will cater to the resilience needs of the community. So it's a transformative approach which has helped for the community to work together with the different stakeholders along with the students in building what they need rather than we go with a technology solution. So the education process had to change accordingly. The ecosystem had to be built to bring out. This is just one example which I brought from Amrita. There are several other examples like this which can be brought from different phases, but it's not like in a day we can build these things. It goes through phased approaches and it goes for years to build this whole program. I think because of the time limitation, I will just show that over time, each of the community, there are more than 100+ community, Amrita is working on this, and each of these communities on different areas they work. This is just one village in Guptapada in Odisha, where they have looked into health, sanitation, water, livelihood, skill development, from the students from different areas like engineering, biotechnology, social science, and different schools have collaborated to provide the solutions for each of these households based on their needs. That's how things have moved. And there are different approaches, and we hope to see that this type of work will come where the education institution change their approach so that we are able to build a sustainable and resilient communities. Thank you, everybody. And this is today the Pan-India footprint of the whole program. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manisha. Indeed, I think this was the best start. When we look at the title, Fostering Educational Processes and Community Engagement, now there are three parts that I see there: the fostering part and the community engagement part and the educational processes part. I think you beautifully brought in all three elements and showed the connections with them. And that example of what Amma was talking about, I think that was the best possible foundation from which we can launch all our discussions for this event. Thank you so much. I'm sure we will get back to more detailed discussion on this in the panel discussion towards the end. So with that said, I'm going to deviate slightly from what I said I would do earlier because of some scheduling constraints. I will introduce each speaker just before their turn. The next speaker is Professor Atsufumi Yokoi. Professor Yokoi is Vice President for Planning and General Affairs, Global Engagement, and Director and Professor of the Global Engagement Office at Okayama University. Professor Yokoi has also been appointed by UNESCO as Chairholder of UNESCO Chair in Research and Education for Sustainable Development. He is in charge of promoting a whole institution approach to the SDGs through meaningful relationships and interactions with UN agencies, international organizations, governments, transnational corporations, universities, and civil societies around the world. Apart from the university, he has also been elected as the Earth Charter International Council member at United Nations mandated University for Peace, UPeace, in Costa Rica since 2020, and also as Fellow of the Royal Society of the Arts in the UK since 2022. Professor Yokoi has received numerous awards for his lifelong work on human and planetary well-being, including the Ordre de l'Encouragement Public in 2023, which is a prestigious French award established in 1932. Professor Yokoi, it is a pleasure to have you with us. Over to you now. We are looking forward to your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introduction. So good afternoon and namaste. Thank you so much for organizing this event, and it's such a pleasure and honor to be part of the presence of Your Excellency, honorable speakers, and distinguished guests, all attendees from all over the world. So I'm Atsufumi Yokoi, Vice President of Okayama University and UNESCO Chairholder in Research Education for Sustainable Development and Earth Charter International Council member at the United Nations mandated University for Peace in Costa Rica. But very quickly, today, I'm here to present a brief introduction. But beforehand, can I share my screen with you all?
Yes, please.
Possible? Okay, thank you very much. And here, I hope it works. Can you see this?
Yes, Professor.
My screen, all right. Thank you very much. Can you see the title slide as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so very quickly, I'm here to present a brief introduction on the UNESCO Japan Prize on ESD winning project in Okayama, Japan, a whole city approach to education for sustainable development, ESD. Well, let's move on to this first slide, the 30th anniversary of the UniTwin UNESCO Chair Program held in UNESCO headquarters in Paris last year, November 2022. Well, as you have already noticed, community, it is so important to make a point to pause in our busy lives to recognize those around us who make our community what it is. You can also find a different category of young leaders and heroes, maybe like you, at a very local level, in particular, during the unprecedented time with this pandemic, COVID-19. So the natural question that I have been tasked to answer is, why is there, well, I must say, intergenerational solidarity so important? So put it differently, what is education for intergenerational solidarity, particularly after the pandemic world? So as a UNESCO chairholder in research and education for sustainable development, it just so happens I have been asking myself this question since I joined this UNESCO Chairs Conference last years. But I have to say, cooperation over competition in this fragmented world is really important to move together to contributing to human and planetary well-being of all. So in this regard, universities, higher education institutions is one of the significant entities to drive the forces for the planetary well-being of all. So let's move on to the second slide about the reputation of Okayama region and Okayama University in this field of ESD to advance the 2030 agenda. So Okayama City, I would say, is one of the areas destination for the education for sustainable development, which was certified as one of the world's first 7 regional centers of expertise in the ESD, approved by United Nations Universities in 2005. So Okayama RCE is really very first RCEs among over 180 RCEs across the world. And following this, so Okayama University also became Asia's first UNESCO chair in the field of ESD in 2007. So since then, Okayama City and Okayama University, together with civil society organization, non-profit organization, have worked together for it, ESD, for more than a decade, in accordance with, as you know, decade of ESD for really long years. So together with, I have to say, more than 250 organizations across the prefecture of Okayama Prefecture. And actually, together with more than 40 community learning centers across the city of Okayama in a non-formal education manner from the kids to elderly person. And also, we Okayama region held the UNESCO World Conference on ESD together with Nagoya City in 2014, bringing together really scholars, world practitioners from all over the world to discuss ESD and also to advance actually toward SDGs through the decade of ESD. And then Okayama ESD project, later on, I will explain about this, received the UNESCO Japan Prize on ESD. And then we also received the UNESCO Learning City Award in 2017. So as such, today, I'd like to present Okayama ESD project with all of you through the really significant event tonight. So what is Okayama ESD project? Okayama ESD project is actually initiated by Mayor of City of Okayama and funded by its local government, approved by United Nations University in 2005, as mentioned before. But actually prior to that, the Prime Minister of Japan proposed the UN Decade of ESD as a World Summit for Sustainable Development in Johannesburg in 2002. So in other words, ESD is really Japanese governmental initiative, at the same time, global initiative. So in accordance with this global framework, the principle of elementary school and junior high school, universities, local NGOs and NPOs actually agreed on this cooperative promotion of the ESD environmental project in 2004 as a core project of Okayama ESD project. So as you can see, this intensified multi-stakeholder collaboration between formal and non-formal education to enable everyone to learn ESD. But more importantly, so ESD is run by children at the Okayama ESD project in collaboration with community learning center staff and people at all levels of the community. In fact, this ESD environmental project has been set up with children ranging from grade 4 elementary school, which is 10 years old, to first year high school student, actually 16 years old, and together with adults or elderly person who are coordinators and supporters. So children are the beneficiaries of this project, but are also the key players, I must say, stakeholders in this planning, preparation, application, results, presentation, and review processes. So as you can see, a lot of projects and workshops and practices across the Okayama ESD project. But more importantly, why is the so important ESD model for followers? But with time limitation, I'd like to highlight 2 points. Community learning centers, which is kominkan in Japanese, but right now, actually kominkan in English to be understandable for ESD followers. And number 2, ESD professional coordinators. So these 2 points are really, really impactful, really significant aspects to drive the forces within this Okayama ESD project. So number 1, community learning centers, kominkan in Japanese, but as I mentioned before in English. So from now, I'd like to use this word kominkan, which means community learning centers, by the way. So kominkan within this Okayama ESD project actually has been built up each junior high school district across the city of Okayama. So city of Okayama has 37 junior high school districts. Each junior high school district has own community learning centers, which are interlinked among 37 community learning centers. So community learning centers, which means kominkan in this Okayama ESD project, which means really important social education facilities that provide residents with education, empower students, and cultivate their power to improve student life, particularly for daily lives. And kominkan are expected to expand their functions for community development while enhancing current activity and the practices that students and community learning center staff have promoted cooperatively. And also, more importantly, ESD professional coordinators. So ESD professional coordinators really support children, which are key stakeholders for this project. And also ESD coordinators provides continuous support and also connects a variety of groups inside and outside the community. And also build a trusting relationship and cooperative networks with ESD-related parties and reach new understandings by utilizing experiences of external professionals. So in other words, ESD training course for coordinators is really important. So in other words, teacher education, particularly in the field of ESD, is really significant more than ever. So from now, the role of Okayama University for this project. I must say, university-city relation is so important because this is a whole city approach. So in the meantime, university has a really wide variety of roles for this project. And as you noticed, so in 2015, 2030 agenda came to the fore. So that is why Okayama University really advanced the 2030 agenda through the Okayama ESD project, which means from ESD toward SDGs. So in 2017, Okayama University, together with United Nations University, and also Okayama City, RC Okayama, held together United Nations conferences, which is really very fast UN conferences from ESD toward SDGs at that time. And after that, Okayama University received the Japan SDG Award from the government of Japan, which is still only a Japanese university with such a prestigious award from the government of Japan. And more importantly, Okayama City as well received the SDG Future City Award from the government of Japan. So in other words, Okayama City and Okayama University together work for from ESD toward SDGs in a whole city approach manner with university-city relation. And with this achievement and reputation, so United Nations headquarters invited us to present a whole city approach, whole university approach to advance ESD for 2030. And more importantly, as you might notice, so ESD for 2030 adopted in 2019. So we really would like to advance ESD for 2030, which is really important. And also we have to deal with core curriculum component by 2025 in terms of education for SDGs. So in line with this new global initiatives, ESD for 2030, so we, Okayama University and Okayama City, work together for target 4.7, which means integration between Earth Charter, global citizenship education, and ESD. So in line with this yearly strategies, so we have built up UN agencies, for example, UPs from Costa Rica for Earth Charter, which means Earth ethics, planetary consciousness, to move forward in terms of ESD. And also global citizenship education from South Korea, precisely UNESCO Seiyu, which is also our really great partners to integrate between GCED and ESD. And last but not least, so teacher education, as mentioned before, is really a fundamental, significant aspect to move forward together in accordance with ESD for 2030. So actually, Okayama University and York University from Canada work together for guidelines for teacher education in terms of ESD from Asia Pacific region towards the global society. So this is really important to localize guideline together with York University and like-minded organization towards really, as you mentioned, community level to use this guideline to advance ESD for 2030. With time limitation, we must stop here, but this is the last slide. So how to step forward in line with timeline framework from the United Nations. Actually, yeah, from 2050, I'd like to backcast toward right now, 2023, which is a halfway point of the UN SDGs, as you have noticed. So this year, United Nations will hold the UN SDG Summit in the UN headquarters. So that is why Okayama University have prepared for brand new educational program, PhD course in ESD from 2021, and also master program in SDG and Sustainable Society from at the same time, 2021. So to advance teacher education for ESD and also to advance ESD for 2030. And this is the last comment from the Earth Charter International, because this is a really correlation with the theme of G20 India, one family, one future, and one Earth. Actually, Earth Charter was adopted in 2000, which is really a historical charter of planetary well-being. So as you can see in the Earth Charter preamble, so we are one human family, one Earth community with a common destiny. So that is why Okayama University, together with like-minded organizations, Earth Charter International from UNUPs and UNESCO and UNESCO Seiyu from South Korea, we really would like to advance 2030 agenda and also to really encourage ethical, active citizens for ethical city for planetary well-being of all. Thank you very much for your attention. I must stop here.
Thank you so much, Professor Yokoi. Very quickly, 3 points. One, at the very beginning, I wanted to make some emphasis on providing operational definitions, which seems so important when we look at education. What is the operational definition for education? Because you'll have thousands of such definitions available. And so if we have a charter, we must start with that. And thank you for bringing that up. The second, providing a wonderful ESD template and model, which I'm sure would be very useful for a lot of other communities across the globe to look at this and use as a starting point. So thank you very much for that. I also want to appreciate your mention of cooperation over competition. In fact, when we look at the etymology of the word compete, it comes from Latin, com petere or come petere, and that actually means come means with, to go along with, and petere is actually to strive. So to strive together. So that's actually the total opposite of what we understand by competition. So the original meaning of the word compete was actually to work together, to strive together, and to move together. So I hope that the global community will embrace that original meaning and take up the spirit of cooperation. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Dhanyawad.
Dhanyawad. We now move to a video presentation. I will first introduce the speaker. Dr. Benno Boer currently serves as UNESCO Natural Science Specialist in New Delhi with geographical focus on Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, the Maldives, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. He's a professional project manager with 30 years of international experience in the global environmental sciences, with longer service periods in Europe, the Arab region, Africa, and Asia. His work addresses socio-ecological issues, which includes climate science, ecosystem conservation and restoration, blue carbon ecosystems, science education, and the nexus between water, energy, and food security. He also works on catalyzing adaptation and mitigation options for sustainable human living. He has published many books, most of them with Springer Nature. He has organized and supported numerous events and has even produced several films. I now request our organizing team to play the talk by Dr. Benno Boer.
Dear Dr. Manisha Sudhir, C20 Sustainability and Resilient Communities Working Group Coordinator and UNESCO Chairholder on Experiential Learning for Sustainable Innovation and Development, Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting the UNESCO New Delhi office's Natural Science Unit as a distinguished speaker at the event Fostering Educational Processes and Community Engagement, Dialogues for a Sustainable World. It is my great honor and pleasure to accept your kind invitation. However, I am unfortunately not available to address you and the audience live, and therefore I can only present this video message. At first, let me thank you for the excellent cooperation between UNESCO and Amrita University. Thanks are due to you and the professional colleagues and the whole team for assisting UNESCO in translating a poster series called Climate Science Literacy into many Indian languages. This is very helpful to foster educational processes and community engagement towards a more sustainable world. We try to translate the climate science literacy posters into as many languages as possible, so that communities in as many places as possible can utilize these educational materials, be better informed, more aware, and attain better skills towards climate resilience. Focusing on my remarks on climate change, I would like to begin by sharing the context. Climate change is the cooling or warming of the Earth's climate over a long period of time, measured over 30 years. The climate is changing. It has always been changing due to the sun's own dynamics, due to inconsistencies in the Earth's orbit around the sun, due to magnetic shifts in the Earth axis and the associated shifts in the poles, as well as due to meteorite impacts and massive volcanic eruptions. For some time now, however, two additional factors have been added. The widespread deforestation and burning of large areas of forest in Africa, America, Australia, Asia, and in Europe. That is why we should protect our forests much better, for example, through ecological forestry inside UNESCO biosphere reserves. No exotic species, no monoculture, no pesticides, no clear-cutting. The forests that are allowed to live as naturally as possible are at the same time the healthiest and most productive. Only these have the capacity to react correctly to the current environmental changes. The massive burning of fossil fuels and the associated emissions of carbon dioxide is another added factor. At the latest, when the global energy crisis began in the early 1970s, at a time when people were already very concerned about CO2 emissions, responsible politicians and the entire business elite should have focused on clean energy sources such as wind, solar, geothermal, kinetic energy, and the production of environmentally friendly biofuels. Unfortunately, this was not done. The carrying capacity of nature was not understood. Decision makers mostly had a background in politics or law and an extremely limited understanding of global ecology. If this had been done, as was being demanded at the time by concerned and educated young people, then not only would we be much more resilient today to global climate change and its impact on water, food and energy security, but human-caused climate change and its consequences would probably be much less, and the energy would be much more affordable and clean, as suggested in SDG 7. It would be less of a cause for uncertainty given the difficulties in procurement and high costs we currently have for all sorts of energy, clean and unclean. Climate change is a reality that affects all of us. You can see that not only after catastrophic weather events like floods and droughts, but climate change affects human life everywhere and every day. Therefore, we need more science-based environmental education. Everybody should be an environmental steward, and we need to reach out and educate communities, including their young members. Communities need to actively engage in nature conservation so that nature can continuously provide the air that we breathe, the water we drink, the food that we eat, and the energy that we need. Young people will eventually become decision makers, some of them at highly influential levels. Decision makers must have a sound knowledge of ecosystems and ecosystem services. They should understand the limits of the ecological carrying capacity of planet Earth and how they can contribute via good policies and practices so nature can continuously provide services for many future generations. Second, I want to talk about environmental education. Education is absolutely necessary in order to deal with climate change. If we don't understand climate change and its causes and effects, then we won't be able to react to it in a sensible way. If people had had more knowledge in the 1970s energy crisis, we would have had fewer negative effects from climate change today, and we would have had a much better functioning and independent energy supply. The same is true for the involvement of women and girls. If women in the last 50 years would have been more involved in scientific research and science-based decision-making related to biodiversity, climate change, water issues and pollution, we would have already had much less of a problem with these issues. We would have had more knowledge and more solutions would have been applied. Finally, I would like to mention a few possibilities for international cooperation. India is a country that works closely with UNESCO, especially in the area of UNESCO biosphere reserves. 12 Indian biosphere reserves serve to protect nature and to demonstrate sustainable human life in harmony with nature. I recommend that all people should visit a biosphere reserve at least once. India is a country with a 7,000-kilometer coastline, ultra-high mountains in the Himalaya, 3.3 million square kilometers in size, 6 times the size of Spain. Spain, however, a world champion not only in football, has 53 biosphere reserves, followed by Russia with 49. I would hope that India will identify, establish, and scientifically manage many more biosphere reserves in the future. I cordially invite you to think about the enormous economic, ecological, social, and cultural benefits that communities will have from setting up UNESCO biosphere reserves, including jobs and income and green entrepreneurship. UNESCO and India's Man in the Biosphere National Committee under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change are in process of planning the 10th South and Central Asian Biosphere Networking Conference in Chennai from the 1st to the 3rd of November this year, 2023, where we will try to find a way to apply best practices actively with an international audience. I was in Ethiopia and in Germany last April to lay the foundation for South-South and North-South cooperation on the platform of biosphere reserves between India, Africa and Europe, because nature conservation needs international exchanges and cooperation. Climate change and plastic pollution do not recognize political borders. I urge you all to please participate in our November event online or in physical presence. I do most certainly hope that Amrita University will continue to support us and support the event. Sustainability must be the new norm globally. Join us to work towards a better planet and healthier human living. Thank you.
While Dr. Benno is not currently in the meeting, we wish to place on record our gratitude to him for taking time to record his valuable message. Very specifically, I would say he's set the ground, he's provided the landscape and the context against which to have very fruitful discussions. He's also encouraged the awareness and education on biospheres, and I'm sure that our all the partners of G20 would take it very seriously and make sure that the citizens are aware of its importance and play their role in taking up the responsibility for increasing the number of biospheres as well. Next, I take pleasure in welcoming one of our own from our home ground, so to speak, Dr. Prema Nedangadi, who is currently the Associate Dean for the School of Computing in the Amritapuri, Kerala campus of Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham. She is a founding director at Amrita Create Labs, which is Amrita's Center for Research in Analytics and Technologies for Education. This is an award-winning educational technology developed for societal benefit. It's an initiative of Amrita University. She's also the principal investigator for the Tribal Ministries Center of Excellence at Amrita University, which has a focus on integrative preventive health care with Ayurveda, also on substance abuse awareness and nutrition from local resources. She is the India coordinator of the C20 Working Group on Education and Digital Transformation during G20 India presidency. Dr. Prema has received several prestigious awards and recognitions for her contributions to digital empowerment in education, including the Digital India Award from the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology and the IT Excellence Award for e-learning and education from the Computer Society of India. Dr. Prema, most welcome. Over to you now.
Om Amriteshwari Namaha. My pranams to the C20 chair and the distinguished panelists. During a visit to Manantawadi tribal area in Kerala, Amma spoke about the innate wisdom, the attitude of conservation that people of earlier generations, indigenous people, embodied. Amma said, Environmental protection was inherent in their very lifestyle, worship, and cultural customs. Reverence and respect towards all creatures and creation was an integral part of their life. It was ingrained in them that they should take only what they needed from nature without exploiting and destroying her. Next slide, please. We started our background work with a comprehensive literature survey reviewing education and digital transformation policy packs of previous C20 countries, UNESCO, UNICEF, OECD, and country policies. There was an overwhelming response to the outreach from CSOs, NGOs, and also individuals. We had nearly 16,000 participants, of which almost 6,000 were international participants from 106 countries. They engaged in policy dialogues, virtual or physical events, panel discussions, outreach activities, or surveys. Next slide, please. The working group identified the following main sub-themes: education for life and global citizenship, education for persons with disabilities, learning equity and the future of education, skill development, education in emergencies, and digital transformation and accessibility. The most aligned to this today's theme is 1 and 3, so we'll go into that. The most discussed was actually 1 and 2. Next slide, please. UNESCO's Global Action Program on Education for Sustainable Development underscores the significant role of education in realizing all the 17 SDGs. Thus, educational processes and systems should not just impart knowledge, but should inspire, enable students to contribute towards creating a sustainable world. At Amrita, our Chancellor Amma has guided us to rethink and reimagine our educational processes. And this first theme, education for life and global citizenship, was built based on over 20 years of experience across Amrita schools all over India and our campuses, which are today 8 campuses in India. And very interestingly, there was an overwhelming response from the CSOs, from the NGOs, from the institutions, not only the government and the private, but even schools with disabilities, specifically for children with disabilities. So this theme was very relevant to all of them. And we are looking at what we call education for life, which is, one notch, taking it above the global citizenship education, where we actually want to see if we can incorporate global spiritual values into mainstream education at all levels and promote the training of ancient and indigenous cultures from all over the world, integrate moral values to shape responsible and citizens with empathy. And for this, of course, one program already Dr. Manisha talked about in detail, the Live in Lab programs. Other than that, we are looking at raising awareness, implementing preventive measures to address substance abuse, internet abuse among youth. And for this is done with a very large program called AAA, Amrita Awareness Ambassadors, and it seeks to build resilience and empower adolescent youth. It's been working across the communities, including in tribal communities. And it's a school-based program that trains selected student ambassadors to spread awareness to their peers and younger children in the local primary schools and in their tribal communities. It started with substance abuse primarily, but now it has expanded to internet abuse to nutrition, the value of educating girls. So the program has actually evolved now from just substance abuse. And the beauty of this program is that we only work with a small group of ambassadors in every community, and we mentor them and we train them. But through them, we are able to reach a large network. And the other important thing is Amma's adopted villages. So we work with the entire community in training teachers, health workers, parents in holistic education, holistic needs. And this would also include kids yoga. So there's a more fun yoga, Amrita Kids Yoga, that is designed for young children. And what we have the Amala Bharatam, which is like the Swachh Bharatam. It was initiated by Amma a very long time back. And so their traditions, all the curriculum that is taught to them also in the mother tongue language. We have after school education centers, and we teach them similar to what they learn in school, similar curriculum, but we use tablet technology. So they get that supplemental learning, and it's more fun. There are educational games, etc. And we have reached over 250 villages. And it's not that those villages we go and do something and come back. Working with children is an ongoing program. We are there with them every day. And it's the community members who are hired as tutors or educators, or providing them the nutrition. So in that way, it becomes also sustainable. Next slide, please. And the other theme that is important for resilience is to ensure equitable access to education. We are looking at foundational literacy, numeracy, and that would include adults also, persons with disabilities, and also sometimes in the emergencies what is required. So, for example, you have the tsunami, and we have looked at outside India. We got a lot of inputs about refugee camps, and I was really surprised to learn that people live in refugee camps. The average time is 17 years. And what does that mean for education? Normally in emergencies, education may be one of the things that falls apart. Because so many other things are more important. And towards that, we launched an app that supports services for refugees. It's actually not used in India at all, but it is being implemented in 16 countries as we speak. And so in India, what we have done is build a lot of education technology. 13 years back, when Amma adopted these villages across India, the first project we launched was handwriting on the tablets to learn to write for children. And of course, that meant you're working with machine learning in Indian languages, and that provides feedback also, and that's something that should work without internet. And so this was way back, before it became more common today. And similarly, we have other projects. Online labs is an example, which is funded by the government. It's become really big now. Most of the schools in CBSE schools in India have been using it because it's endorsed by CBSE, and it is also now put into the government's Diksha platform, which means anybody can access it for free and even download it and use it wherever they want. So and it's also available in 4 languages, Indian languages. It's being translated to additional languages. So those are some of the types of technology that we can provide for inclusion. In fact, a lot of countries outside India are also using it. There is the GoLabs Consortium in Europe, and they have integrated most of our labs into their platform. And teachers there are converting it to Spanish. So that was very interesting for us to learn. And and also now we have started working towards making it disability friendly. So that's another huge population that is affected because of learning difficulties. We just don't have the tools that are affordable, and we don't have the knowledge that such children are able to achieve. So a multi-pronged approach of providing the technology, providing not only teacher training through professional and in-service certificate courses, but the entire community, including the parents, that these children can achieve. And just this morning, we had Dr. Homier. He is head of Bookshare, and he is blind, but he can do things better than most of us. And it was very interesting to learn how he used technology to do that. Next slide, please. I just wanted to share one best practice by Dr. Bidhan Chandra Roy in the US. He's a faculty at a university, but what he's doing is actually he has a formal education program for people who are sentenced to life in California prisons. And it was really amazing to hear that people have been, some of them have committed murder, and many times they were youth taking drugs in gangs, and either they were abused themselves and not knowledgeable about what to do. But these are the kind of people that he's giving formal education, and some of them have been employed by his own NGO, and many of them have got out of prison and come back to the community. And so that is an example of education for life or compassionate education. So you have faculty or you have NGOs who do this. Sometimes students are also involved in doing this, and look at the outcome. People you think can never be integrated into society again. They are learning skills, they are getting education, and they are able to come back and not go back into prison. And similarly, we have a program that our Chancellor Amma has done, all the prisons in Kerala. There is training with yoga and meditation. And here also what we found is after Amma's program started, the number of prisoners who leave and do not come back has reduced. And that is a huge thing. And also, in general, the prisons were much more peaceful. And there was one IAS officer there, actually, he won an award from the government because the prisons were, the state of the prisons was so much better because of Amma's intervention in all the prisons in Kerala. And now the program is working in a big scale in Tamil Nadu also. So these are some of the udaharans I wanted to share. And one last example is how we work in the villages. So many, many years back, there was one village in Gujarat where girls were not going to high school just because there was no high school inside the village and they were not allowed to go outside. And so this is where there was one girl who had graduated, staying with her uncle somewhere else. And so we set up a tutoring with her, and then we had the first set of girls graduate through the National Open Schooling. Of course, after that, we worked on it so that now the local school has does have higher grades. So did I use up all my time?
Yes, more than that, but
Okay,
you can wrap
sorry.
up this.
Thank you. All right. So I'm done, yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prema. There's quite a lot to digest over there. And I think it gives some talking points for our panel discussion as well. But we are running late. So I'll proceed very quickly to the next speaker. And I would request the speakers coming ahead to be as concise as possible while still communicating whatever you intended today. So very quickly, the next speaker I would like to introduce is Mr. Libby Johnson. I take great pleasure in welcoming him. Mr. Johnson is the Executive Director of Gram Vikas in Odisha. He has led large-scale, impactful poverty eradication efforts in his 25+ years of social development work in diverse sectors of water, sanitation, livelihoods, disaster management, and community institutions. He has worked with grassroots development organizations, government programs, and the United Nations. Mr. Libby regularly contributes to policy deliberations in rural drinking water and sanitation and livelihood sectors at the national and state levels. Mr. Johnson, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Devanathan, and it's a pleasure to be here in the panel today. I work with a grassroots development organization in Odisha, and that's what I've done for most part of my life. And what I would like to speak today is a slightly different perspective, more worm's eye view of what happens based on what I've learned and experienced through my work. A good part of that have been in the rural areas of Eastern India, in the states of Bihar, Jharkhand, and Odisha. Gram Vikas, the organization that I currently lead, have been working with rural communities, substantial in the Eastern Ghats regions of Odisha for the last 44 years. Our work is focused on building community capabilities and enabling rural communities to build a better quality of life, and that has involved work on primary education, on early child care, on reforestation, on watershed-related land and water development, on agriculture, also renewable energy, drinking water, and sanitation. Over the last 7 or 8 years, we found that the community partners that we work with across various districts of Odisha have come forward to express their need, of their desire to reverse the process of natural resources degradation. And the most significant manifestation of that is with respect to availability of water, both for drinking and for productive uses like farming. And we started examining the issue in the specific context of the Eastern Ghats. A lot of villages actually depend on springs, mountain springs, for their drinking water and for their irrigation needs. And we found that springs were drying up, and quite rapidly in the last few years. We sat with these communities, we did transect walks with these communities, and we realized that the rapid deforestation of the hills, of the mountains, had contributed substantially. Many of these areas, the ridges are protected forests, whereas the lower slopes are community managed land. And we were able to solve for this problem together with the communities, and managing the slope, preventing runoff, taking up land and water conservation, replanting, reforesting. And in the process of this, we realized that the traditional wisdom they have, the traditional knowledge they had about how to manage natural resources needed supplementing, because the changes in climate patterns, the way the horticulture crops are grown, the way forests regenerate themselves, a lot of it had changed from what they had been used to. So we had to build a system of how new knowledge, modern scientific practices had to be melded with what people already knew. And I would like to share a few lessons that we learned, and there are 4 or 5 lessons that I learned that I would like to highlight coming out of these experiences. The first, and I think this is very relevant to the topic today as we look at process of education and how communities become resilient over a longer period of time. The first is that poor people, particularly those living in remote rural parts of India, are willing to change, and there is a huge desire to change and to adapt new practices, adopt positive change. And unlike what popular media try to paint a picture of ignorance or unwillingness to change, my experience has been that there is a great amount of willingness to change, and across generation. It's not just the older people, it's not just the younger people, it's not just women or men, it's across communities. And this is something that we need to build upon. The second is that technical and managerial skills and knowledge has to be built. And it's not just about, taking something out of a packet and saying that this is the kind of technology you need, or this is the kind of managerial skills you need, but developing it, which is contextual, specific to the context, and not going with something that is a very cookie cutter thing. I mean, you have a standard design, you just blueprint it and try and copy it across. Our experience has been, even with a broader design, there's a lot of local contextualization that needs to happen. And that is important in terms of building the technical and managerial abilities of the communities to manage the change process, to understand the problem, to solve the problem, to find solutions, and then actually implement it. Dignity and agency are 2 elements that we find a lot of well-meaning, well-intended interventions actually don't give importance to. Dignity of the individual, be it a woman, be it a Adivasi, be it a Dalit, be it a child. There is a certain amount of dignity. There's a specific, the dignity is absolute, it's not relative. It's every human being deserves dignity. And how do we design interventions? How do we work with communities without compromising on the dignity of the individual, and the whole process enabling, enhancing the agency that people have, because they are the ones who desire change. They are the ones who can actually bring about change. How do we not do processes that rob them of the agency to control, the control over the processes, control over decisions? And this is very important. What we found, two interventions, two approaches that we found most significant is, one is working with representative democratic institutions at the village level that represents the need of the people, the will of the people, the desire of the people to change, and leads the whole process. And investing in young people, educating them with technical and managerial skills to be service providers to help solve the problem that the communities identify. And I believe a locally contextual, dignified, agency enhancing, local capacity building and institution building are very important if we have to reach out to the large population of rural communities across India, across the globe, and actually build resilience in a way that is sustainable and in a way that communities themselves own and manage the processes. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, and thank you also for helping us with the time aspect of it, for keeping us on time. I think we'll come back to this. I have some questions in mind as well, but we'll come back to it during the Q&A. I'd like to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Vinita Apte. Dr. Vinita is the founder of TERRE Policy Center. She started this NGO with a motto, to think is good, but to act is better. So Terre Policy Center has implemented a number of projects of environmental education and solar energy. Dr. Vinita was consultant in the United Nations Environmental Program Paris as a communication expert and senior official and international expert on sustainable development and green economy. She successfully led a global team of interns and consultants with diverse cultural backgrounds in UNEP's Paris office and in Terre's office. Dr. Apte has received numerous awards for her outstanding work and has represented India in many international conferences on climate change. She's also the author of 7 books. Dr. Vinita, welcome, and we look forward to listening to your thoughts.
Thank you so much. Thanks for this great opportunity. Pranam to all people who are here on the panel as well as in the participation. I run Terre Policy Center. Terre means earth in French, and we stand for technology, education, research, and rehabilitation for the environment. We are basically we work on climate change. And for that, there are so many parameters where you could work, like afforestation, environment education. And environment education, for me, it's a real thing which we can spread all over the world, because they're working with children, and especially on the subject which is close to my heart and everyone's heart now is environment. And through that environmental awareness, we wanted to make sure that education should be given to the children for the environmental literacy. So we have started with some new innovative things for giving the environment awareness. Like we have developed some tools on our own. We have developed some games for the children, like snake and ladder, some crossword puzzles. There are a lot of practical knowledge books, publications for the children. It is in the very simple knowledge, simple language. So many times when we see there is the environmental material is in a very difficult language, and which is very difficult to adapt the children at the community level. So we have adopted the very simple language to teach the children and also the teachers. So we have a couple of other programs for environment, and I always feel that if you work on the grassroots level with the students and teachers, it will give a good impact. In terms of impact indicators, you can get many things in return when you start learning at the very small age. With this, I request the organizers to share my film, a small film which we have made on our projects, so that after that I will conclude in 2 minutes. I don't want to speak much. It is already 6:30. So can you share my film?
Yeah, Vaishak. Okay, thank you.
Environment degradation, being a worldwide issue, has an urgent need to act upon. Proper education and awareness can give the right direction. Awareness of different environmental aspects and issues in all age groups can bring a change for a sustainable future. Terre Policy Center, a leading organization in the field of environment, is focusing on environmental awareness among various stakeholders. Students, who are known as the future of the nation, can make a difference in the society. Keeping this in mind, Terre Policy Center has initiated a national level online quiz competition called as Terre Olympiad for environmental awareness among the students. Terre Policy Center has been running these exams since 2015 and has conducted 8 editions till now. Terre Olympiad is conducted in 3 categories: sapling from 5th to 9th standard, plant from 10th to 12th standard, and tree 12th to undergraduates. Till date, over 17 lakh students across India have participated in the examination. The registration for the schools and students is easy and free of cost, and it starts in the month of August. The schools and institutes are also encouraged to participate at large by felicitations the schools for maximum participation. TER Policy Center is conducting TER Olympiad in collaboration with Tata Motors, and every year the winners of the examination are awarded various electronic gadgets useful in their learning process, such as laptops, tablets, hard drives, etc. In addition to this, TER Policy Center has initiated a fellowship titled Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Young Research Fellowship for the Indian researchers in the reverential memory of late President and scientist Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. TER Policy Center is awarding fellowship to the young researchers of India since last 4 years, who are making a measurable impact on the protection and overall improvement of the environment by researching in various sectors like plastic pollution, clean air, agriculture, technology, and innovation. Till date, over 50 researchers across India under the age of 25 years have been benefited with this fellowship. This fellowship is being solely managed and funded by TER Policy Center. The fellowship is announced on the birth anniversary of late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. The whole process of fellowship and award ceremony is conducted online. It promotes Digital India for betterment of education.
Thank you so much. Last 7 to 8 years, we have distributed. We have make aware more than 20 lakh students through TER Olympiad, and which is it is very surprising that the city students are very minimal who are applying for this TER Olympiad and also for the APJ Abdul Kalam Fellowship. We just have completed the last round of interviews today about APJ Abdul Kalam, and I'm very much proud that from this very small villages, students are coming up with very innovative projects. So with this, TER Policy Center is working on environmental literacy throughout the year, all over the world. When the last year's climate change conference in Sharm el Sheikh have come up with the vision of education, and this year's COP28 in Dubai also the aim with the education on environment and all other aspects of the themes. So this theme, with this theme, the international organizations are also participating for environmental education and sustainable resilience communities. So I'm very much proud that we could work on those noble issues. And of course, we could, because of this C20 platform, I could get guidance with Amaji's University and her vision. So we could look forward for working on every aspect of climate change through environmental education. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vinita, and thank you for being so concise. Definitely, we look forward to continuing this partnership way beyond C20. As Dr. Manisha had said, we are definitely in this for the long ride. It's not just for 1 year for the Indian presidency. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, I take pleasure in introducing Ms. Radhika Bhagat. Ms. Radhika is founder and CEO of Sacred Earth Trust. She's a wildlife conservationist and has over 15 years experience working on conservation projects in India and Bhutan, addressing a wide range of threats to our natural heritage. Her organization, Sacred Earth Trust, works on the principles of sacred ecology to reconnect people spiritually with nature, to protect sacred groves in India, and also with habitat restoration. Ms. Radhika, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you so much. It's just that my dog started barking. Just give me a second. I'm so sorry for that. Okay, so thank you so much for the introduction, and I'm really grateful for Amrita to be organizing this. and for all the panelists to be to be participating in this so wholeheartedly. So I'll start sharing my PPT. Just let me know once you are able to view it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Great. So as was mentioned, I have been working in this field for close to 15 years, a little more than that. And before I started my organization, I was working with another leading wildlife organization for 13 years. And while we had a lot of wins, I realized that we were only addressing the symptoms of the problem and not the root cause. And the root cause I realized was like a disconnection from nature and from our own selves. And that's how Sacred Earth Trust took birth. And the ideology of the trust is basically, we are rooted in the principles of spiritual ecology, because we believe that there is a spiritual dimension to what is happening right now on our planet, whether it's the ecological crisis or the humanitarian social crisis that we're facing. And we aim to bring about eco-spirituality right to the forefront, so that there are more and more people like us who really feel deeply for the environment and who want to take action. So there is a quote by Gus Betz, and I'm building the, it's kind of building the argument for what I'm going to say ahead, is that he's the American advisor for climate change, Gus Betz. And he said that he used to believe that the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, climate change. And he thought that with few decades of good science, we could solve these problems. But then he realized he was wrong. And the main problems were selfishness, greed, and apathy. And for that, we need a spiritual and a cultural transformation. And that's why we're here today. It's what's needed right now in the world. And spiritual ecology is this emerging field. I wouldn't say it's emerging. It's emerging in terms of how it's coined right now, but it's been part of our cultures forever. Like whether you look at any part of the world, all cultures are rooted in the principles of nature worship, and that's where we come from. So our projects, if we talk about our three focus areas, our first focus area is working on protecting sacred groves in India. So India has over, some estimates say 1.5 lakh, that's 150,000 to 200,000 sacred groves, of which only 14,000 have been documented. And these have been protected by local communities. And they have very high species richness and, sometimes even higher than national parks and sanctuaries. But there's insufficient data. And the most worrying trend that we saw across India was that there was a breakdown in the belief system of the communities that have been protecting these forests or groves for so many thousands of years. So as we've done ecological studies and perception and attitude surveys with the local communities. On the left, you can see one of our groves, which is in the middle of, there's just one small fragment of green in the middle of this mosaic of agricultural land. And it's very worrying because desertification is happening so quickly in that landscape. And almost 92% of the people who were surveyed said that the size of the groves have reduced drastically over the years. And also there is a breakdown in the belief systems associated, which is a leading cause of why this loss of habitat is happening. In Uttarakhand also, we studied about 8 to 9 groves. And what we found was, when we were doing literature surveys, was that there was a breakdown in the belief systems which was protecting these groves. And most of these groves have like local deities or some belief systems on the trees that were growing there. And what they realized was that the knowledge was not being passed down from the older generation to the next generation. Pathways of transmission of knowledge or education or wisdom were broken. And we felt that was something that we needed to take up. So in terms of what we recommend and what we have been working on also is that we feel it's very important to bring together science and spirituality for effective long-term conservation, because it's very important to understand the community's belief systems and their perceptions of these community forests for sustainable conservation in the years to come. Secondly, we have to rebuild these pathways of knowledge transmission, because this itself is a form of education, right? Where perhaps it's not education as we understand it, but it's education in within the community. And because there's no written documentation of these origin stories, the taboos, the belief systems, the festivals are not being celebrated at the same frequency anymore. And the youth are unaware and they're not connected because they associate nature with what they're taught in mainstream education, which has been so far talking about nature as a resource. I'm glad to see that things are changing now, hearing everybody speaking today. We're also working on a Sacred Grove network where we bring together the management bodies of all these groves across India. We're adding to this database slowly, and so that there is an exchange of knowledge and experience between these bodies. And there are a lot of common threads and challenges that they face that this network can be used to provide them with that information and also educational resources. In terms of our urban working with urban communities where we are building urban forests, we are just in the beginning of this project, and there's opportunity to do a lot of wetland restoration in a city like Delhi or the NCR region, and which are very vulnerable to climate change because the population densities are so high and the infrastructure is very interconnected. And we can help cities build their resilience to the heat effects of upcoming impending heat effects and the flooding due to climate change using urban forests and wetland restoration. However, there is a big need for education and capacity building on what are the best practices that civil societies and authorities can bring in for habitat restoration, because it's currently a very unorganized sector where everybody is just kind of doing whatever they feel is right. But with the limited land that we have for restoration, it's a disaster in the making, because we're not planting the right species and we're not creating the habitat that our biodiversity so badly needs. I think there's also a need to have a CSR focused education to educate on the right approach towards, there's a focus on carbon currently world over, on how they should approach these projects and environmental projects, because there's a lot of pressure from corporates to for civil society organizations to deliver on certain things which compromises the integrity of the ecosystem. We also conduct awareness programs, but we have built these with a lot of passion and a lot of thought has gone into creating these different modules. So some are for school children, some are for adults, for them to be able to experience the deeper connection with nature, because only once somebody experiences that, they're going to take the next step to take action to protect the environment. We recently also developed a module for the frontline forest staff, and we'll soon be doing a training in one of the tiger reserves in northern India. And this also kind of focuses on the value systems and spiritual ecology and a lot of mental health, which actually is going to be in partnership with Amrita University. Now coming to the challenges that I see in implementing the right models for citizen or community engagement or education. if we look at climate justice as well, right? Social justice, there are two main issues that we need to look at. One is the procedural justice and the distributional justice. So if we look at the procedural justice, that ensures that everybody is heard, no matter what strata of society they belong to, their voices and their needs are accounted for. But that's not really happening currently, and I think that's a potential area for us to work on. And distributional justice also, it looks at, once we've understood the needs, how do we address the challenges of climate change by ensuring that we are fairly distributing and equally distributing, based on the responsibility and the availability and the ability of the stakeholders. Like if you take the example of Kerala, where they have very strong local governance institutions, so their procedural justice system is stronger. But if we look at, on the other hand, on the right side, there are a lot of political and economic barriers to implement distributional justice currently. Whether even if we look at educational programs, I think they'll have to be focused towards this, because we need to, and not just at the communities, but I think it has to go up the hierarchy. I mean, the different layers, not the hierarchy, into the governance structures, into the civil society organizations, into various institutes and the community, so that they're able to, bring justice and balance to, when we say that we need to achieve a certain target, we are not doing actions which are really against the target. And secondly, I think currently the focus is too much on being prepared for emergency rather than the long-term and systemic view. So I think when we are talking about educational programs focusing, I think we need to empower the community with what they can do, what actual conservation hard action they can take on ground to take preventive action rather than just being prepared for disaster. We still have time to take those preventive actions. Okay, so this is my last slide, and I've just put the challenges and the the opportunities we have for education and community engagement. So what are we facing right now? The first is we have lack of awareness and focus on the serious implications of climate change and environmental destruction. Why I say this while we're at a seminar, at a webinar, who's where we're discussing this, is that I feel like on the ground level, if I talk to a lay person in my community, they are not as aware of what is happening and what is coming. Which is, what are the disasters impending in the near future. So I feel that awareness is very important, because we will have so much more support for what we want to achieve. There's a lack of focus and perceived value of ethics and values in the systems in all of society, industry and governance. And as long as we're going to say that, oh, that's how things are, we'll never be able to create actual change. We have to put in systems which focus dedicatedly on creating these systemic changes in society, where we value, truthfulness, honesty, integrity, over just looking at a paradigm of chasing material gains as a source of happiness, which is really not giving anybody happiness, and it's brought us to the brink of destruction. The next is the mechanized worldview instead of the sacred worldview that we once had about earth and nature. Fourthly, while somebody can argue that we have a system in place for citizens to voice their objections against environmental destruction, a lot of times it doesn't work that way. We're kind of left grasping for straws, but we don't really get anything out of our efforts. And the lack of factoring in ecosystem services and environmental impact assessments, which is the big thing, because these are incremental in nature and they have financial, economic values attached to them. Now, in terms of how we can apply them, find solutions in the education and community engagement, is that first we relook at the model. What we say is development and what we say is wealth. And we can perhaps take some inputs from the national happiness model that Bhutan follows and maybe add to it and fine tune it better, because it's more comprehensive than only looking at the materialistic view. Secondly, we need to look at our highest principles of our ethics and our value systems to align with both the human and ecological rights that we are fighting for. Then we are working currently on a module, not just for school children, but also for university students on spiritual ecology. And I also foresee a training of trainers or a training of teachers to take this further ahead. We need a comprehensive citizen awareness campaign on disaster preparedness, of course, but also long-term prevention action. And they should go down at RW and block level. So, it goes down to, trickles down to that level where people are able to not only be educated on what they can do and what is coming in the near future, but they are able to take the right action. Then I see interagency cooperation, whether it's, with organizations such as UNESCO, the MGIP, the governance systems, the civil society organizations like Amrita, to bring in all stakeholders and work on, a holistic program that looks at educating society as a whole on truthfully telling them what's coming up and what we need to do. And yes, that's what I feel. And I think there also has to be some focus on the consumptive behavior we see amongst people, and for them to be educated on the actual impacts environmentally and in terms of ecosystem services that various developmental projects present to them. So with that, these are the opportunities that we have to build our education plans around. And I'll stop screen sharing. I just let me know when is that okay? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Radhika. And it's been wonderful to see the way each speaker has been complementing the points from the previous speaker and so on. And we have gradually built up a very comprehensive set of dimensions from social to political to economic to cultural to spiritual and so on. And it's, I'm sure that we'll have a very fruitful discussion as well subsequently. A lot of food for thought for our audience to take away from this event as well. Thank you so much. And now the last speaker, I am pleased to introduce to you Ms. Millie Parmar. Ms. Millie is Senior Manager, Programs at Dharma Life. She holds a PG Diploma in Rural Management from the Institute of Rural Management in Anand. As a dedicated development professional, Ms. Millie has experience in community-owned enterprises, fostering business growth, and executing impactful social initiatives. She has a strong sense of purpose for three overarching themes that deeply resonate with her, namely equity, environmental sustainability, and crafts. Ms. Millie, welcome and over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Shriram, and the organizers of the C20 working group for inviting me to this webinar and giving me the opportunity to share our experiences on behalf of Dharma Life. I would also like to thank all the previous speakers for sharing the exemplary work that they've been doing. I'll just pull up my screen. Professor Shriram, can you please confirm if it's feasible?
Yes, we can see it.
So thank you once again. And Dharma Life is a social enterprise. We are a 15-year-old social enterprise based in India and Germany. And we aim to drive sustainable community development through a network of entrepreneurs, rural women entrepreneurs, who help us deliver social impact products and services in rural areas. So at the core of our implementation model is the Dharma Life entrepreneurs, or DLEs as we like to call them. And the focus areas or the cause areas that we work on are broader areas like climate action, clean energy, gender equality, livelihoods, etc. And the supporting system of our core team of our innovation engine that focuses on research and our market-driven social commerce structure. All this complement the work or support the work that the DLEs do at the grassroots level. And the DLEs are really the point of contact for us to reach out to rural communities at scale. We have about 17,000. I'm so sorry, I'm just going to minimize this. We have about 17,000 DLEs across 11 states in India, and a good team of 200 plus members who support these DLEs to work on different cause areas. And so DLEs are basically rural women. We've identified them from various different villages. They are basically change agents for us. They are leaders for us. We have trained them on different aspects of being an entrepreneur or change maker. So whenever we start any program on the cause areas that I mentioned, the first step is to train these DLEs on those. So to give you an example, for example, clean energy is one of the areas that we work on. So the first step there is to train these DLEs, provide them resources in terms of knowledge, and also technical resources or tools in terms of the products that are linked with that cause area. So if we talk about clean energy, the first thing is training the DLEs to understand what clean energy is, why solar energy solutions or decentralized renewable energy solutions are required, what are the benefits, how to use them, where to go if there are any issues, and then providing them access to all those tools so that they are able to provide this tools to communities in their surrounding villages. So one DLE works in about 3 to 5 villages in her panchayat, reaching out to over 1,000 households overall. And once their capacity building and training, which is mostly in physical form, it's done, they go out in villages and they start sensitizing other people. They start discussing, they start counseling them on why the community should adopt, let's say, a solar lighting solution, right? And other similar products. So DLE's livelihoods are sustained through this activity. They're not only just sharing the knowledge that they get, they also provide access to different products and services which are not easily available in the rural area. So some of the other products that DLEs work on are like menstrual hygiene products, or sanitizers, or family planning products, mobile phones, right, etc. So the idea is to train DLEs enough to pass the knowledge further on to the communities. And the DLEs do this through various approaches. They communicate with the communities through group exercises or through online training programs, or they do different campaigns and events in their villages. And I would like to highlight few campaigns that are flagship campaigns for Dharma Life and have worked really well are the Lights, Camera, Action and Dharma Chef events. So on the left side, you can see you have to imagine a rural setup, a small village of about 200, 300 households. And there is a stage set up for children to come and perform, give a dance performance. And, you know, when there is such an event going on in a village, all the community members come together at one place. They would exchange notes of what is happening. They're curious to know what is happening. And if you see on the stage, the lights that are used are really the solar lights. We don't use any other products. So this creates a sense of curiosity in the minds of the community in the villages. And through this platform, the DLEs also share the details on what the product is, why it is required, how it is beneficial for them not only from environmental perspective, but also from economic perspective for themselves. And we've seen that after such events, the sales of such products for DLEs really go up very high. The other event is Dharma Chef event that we do, and this tries to focus on the indoor air pollution and nutrition. So you have to imagine a small master chef event in a village where about 5 to 7 women would come and make a dish of their choice, but not on traditional gas chulas, etc., but on induction cook stove. So and they are encouraged to also prepare some dish which is nutritional. So this then transfers the emphasis on why induction cooker is like effectively usable in the community, and then why nutrition is important, and then the sales of these products are that go high. So these are the kind of community engagement exercises that are done. So if you really see, there are 2 levels of knowledge transfer and access to products that happens, one from Dharma Life team and other support structure to DLEs, and then through DLEs to further rural communities. So that's the core model that we work on, and our experience has been great so far. There are some other programs that also are important to Dharma Life, and for example, Lighting Up Young Minds is an education program for younger children from standard 5th to 8th. And they come on, it's an online platform where they can come and supplement their learning, supplement their mainstream education that they get from their schooling, but also like LUIM, as we call it, Lighting Up Young Minds. It provides other courses that they can pursue. So a standard 8 student, if is interested to learn programming, that is available on LUIM. I would like to highlight Jaya program in the later slides. And Jaya program is basically a livelihoods enhancement program for women, especially rural women. And it's a hybrid platform that provides like opportunity for women for training. So most women in rural areas, they don't really get enough opportunities to educate themselves well or get trained themselves well so as to participate in the workforce. So the main objective of the Jaya program really is to bring those women in mainstream workforce by providing them training opportunities and hand-holding support. So as I mentioned, Jaya is a hybrid platform. So we train them online and offline and then provide them hand-holding support to start their livelihood. Within Jaya, we have a Green Weave initiative, which I want to highlight here. And the focus of the Green Weave program is promotion of circular entrepreneurship for sustainable textiles. And this we do through 2 types of livelihood activities. One is through tailor entrepreneurs that we create, and other is building artisan livelihoods. So the highlight of Green Weave is embedding sustainability and circularity in their livelihood. So when we say we are promoting entrepreneurship in artisans and tailors, they are not just any other regular artisans or tailors. They're focusing on sustainability and circularity in whatever practices that they follow. So for example, tailors have basically rural women who do not have much skill. They are trained from scratch on sewing and tailoring skills, and then they start their own enterprise, a small tailor shop in their villages. And the focus for them is also sustainability, right? They take care of what material they are working on, or the product circularity, how much waste they are generating, or how much waste they are sending to landfills. If they are able to work on it, we provide them trainings on upcycling, etc. So they try to minimize the waste that goes to landfill, or try to aggregate the waste from nearby areas and send it to recycling. And artisans, for example, we work with various types of crafts, including chikankari, Banarasi, block printing, tussar silk, Madhubani, etc. So here, over the years, to make it more commercial, people have now shifted to more environmentally harmful processes. So we have through the cradle to cradle framework that you see on the screen, we have tried to identify what processes need to change and what intervention need to happen at what level to make this system, to make the craft more sustainable. I will quickly just highlight the stages that we follow in promotion of sustainable livelihoods under Green Weave program. Is the first stage is sensitization and counseling, where really first DLEs, as I mentioned, they go about in the communities and try to spread word around what is available on Jaya platform, on online training platform, on offline support and trainings, what all is available, and whether they see any opportunity for them to build their livelihoods through that. And the next step is training on Jaya application, the first step. And we've seen that over the years, we started with physical capacity building and community engagement activities to build capabilities of these communities. But after COVID, especially, there is, even in rural area, we've seen a lot of potential to transfer capacity building, like transfer skills and knowledge and build capacities of communities through online platforms. So Jaya app tries to really focus on and build on the strength that are there for digital system to play in rural areas. And once the training is done on Jaya app, there is their capacity is then supplemented with in-person handholding and training, and their life, and then the communities move to their livelihoods in term and decide whether they want to do entrepreneurship themselves or they want to go into employment. And that's when the really DLE's engagement stops and Dharma Life team's engagement really starts more. And that's where we provide incubation and business support and sales support through our own brand, etc., and try to bring them on e-commerce platform to sell their products and also generate consumer awareness on sustainable fashion products. So this is the screenshot of the Jaya platform that we have, and you can see some of the courses here on different themes like sustainability, renewable energy. So you can see circularity for tailors, you can see training on solar dryer, how to install that, how to use that, what is the price of it, where do you get that, all those things. These are some more snapshots of the platform. What I want to highlight here is also the engagement that can happen over the online platform in terms of chat groups or the job portal, market linkage opportunities that we show on the Jaya platform. And this has been working well for us, and we are building on this. Now moving to some of the explorations that we are really trying to do for artisans is in-person participatory capacity building. So when we talk about fashion or textiles, we've seen that the carbon emissions are really huge, and we all of us know that almost 10% of global carbon emission comes from fashion and textiles. And so we have, through cradle to cradle approach, tried to understand at what step we really need to intervene, and then we are trying to find a fitment really to see whether it is viable for artisans to switch to that. And we don't want this to be just win for environment and lose for the community. We want it to be a win-win for both of them. So here you can see on the top, these are the women who have gone through training on our Jaya platform, and they are chikankari artisans, and now they're exploring natural dyeing using marigold, let's say. So they're trying in smaller lots how the color is coming, what is the fastness, how the customer is responding for that, and then we try to scale it up in partnership with these communities. The lower photograph shows the textile leftover waste that is generated out of the tailoring process, and the tailors that have undergone the training with us, they've seen and understood the adverse impact of that on the environment, and now started experimenting with zero waste patterns. So making products in such a way that leftovers are either minimized or they are zero. So these are the kind of participatory explorations that we are trying out under Jaya program. This is one more good example of participatory process re-engineering or really a pilot, we can say. The drainage that you see is the drainage from washing unit in Lucknow. This is where about 200 odd washermen wash chikankari products, and almost 75,000 liters of water is consumed, and then through this final drainage, it is discharged into Gomti River in Lucknow. So now there is a committee of this washermen called Minority Youth Washers Welfare Committee, and we discussed with them what are the harmful contaminants that go into this, what all soaps and acids and caustic soda is used in the process, and how it is affecting the environment, and not only environment, their own health. So some of the washermen, their fingerprints are burnt because of the usage of such harsh chemicals. So they have now understood the adverse impact of this, and they are partnering with us and some experts from University of Minster who are trying to now develop a filter solution which can absorb all the contaminants through the water, so that it's more of a mitigation technique for this, for saving the water. In addition, we are also trying to see how we can reduce the impact on the health of this washerman, for example. So trying out different types of gloves. So some of the gloves are slipping, so it's not effectively usable for them. So they're happily engaging with us, giving us timely feedback on what is working, what is not working, what natural soap is really removing the stains effectively, and what we can, whether it is available in large quantities to be used by all washermen. So all such explorations are going on. And these are the example of the waste upcycling that the tailors are doing. So under Jaya, we currently now have about 1,500 tailor entrepreneurs who have started their shops in 767 states, and they've understood how the textile waste is impacting the environment, and started working on at small scale, creating upcycled products like this that you see on screen. And even with such a small number, we can avoid almost 400-500 kg of textile waste every month from going to landfills. That's for us a huge positive sign in the right direction. So at the last, I would like to just highlight that all this capacity building, training, education processes approach, and community engagement approaches have been working for us well, and we've been able to reach to more than 15 million people through different activities, and save almost 1 lakh tons of carbon dioxide through different processes. And we are continuing to strive to build a sustainable planet and sustainable communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Millie. And very impressive work, and the results speak for themselves. So we look forward to continuing the collaboration beyond the year of India's G20 presidency. So with that, we have come to the end of the formal presentations by the speakers. We now move to a brief session. I think we may have about 15 minutes to handle some questions from the audience, and I would say that the panelists can feel free to take up any of the questions that may come up. To start with, there is one question that's already been posted. I'll just read that out, and maybe we can start with that. Yeah, one second. Yeah, this first question is, in terms of education for sustainable development, what are the critical factors that can enable or hinder empowering local communities? And I think there are 3 questions actually. The second one, it says, what is the role of academia and civil societies? And the third question is, how can the best practices be scaled up? So perhaps I can start with Dr. Manisha. Would you like to field any of these questions?
Thank you, Dr. Sriram. I think since you have read all 3 questions together, I think my brain has not captured all the 3 questions together. If you could either write it somewhere or you can just repeat it, would help me.
So perhaps I can direct this one question that may be more specific and relevant. What is the role of academia and civil societies in terms of empowering local communities?
So based on my experience and also with the people who have worked in the field and my interactions with the CSOs over this 1 year, where I am with more than 700 CEOs which we have worked, what I have learned is that to empower the community, one of the major thing is the knowledge about the community, the understanding about the community. So how you equip the education system to understand the needs of the community. Otherwise, we may think that this is the need and we will go and work on that, which may not be the need. And that's why several times the innovations fail. It's not the technological failure, it's the adoption failure, because you are not giving them what they want. So how do you make sure the education system to understand what is the need or the requirement of the ground reality, how we will work? To give you an example, when we were working in the Odisha village, one of the things which we were working was on cook stoves. So as usual, cook stove, everybody knows the technology. It's easy to do it. We worked on the cook stove in one village in Bihar and one village in Odisha. Same, we have discussed everything, almost same design came in. And then we went back to the community, based on the community itself, we went back and tried to do co-design with them to make sure that each and every design factors, what we have put in, is in line with their thought process. And that's the moment they said that, see, during the summer season, our kitchen is very, very hot. We cannot even stand inside. We sweat like anything. At that moment, I want to move I want to move my equipment to outside so that I can use. So they wanted it to be lightweight. They wanted it to have handles, etc. Then what the Bihar people didn't want those things, because they were fine with all seasons, the same thing. So here the community had a different requirement based on the climate interaction, the environmental interaction there. So it's very important to understand whenever we go to the community to do something beneficial to them, it is important to understand the different factors on the socio-cultural aspects, the political factors, and at the same time, the environmental aspect and the institutional aspects, because it's play a major role. There are cases where when we have worked on solutions, what we had seen is like solutions has been sustained for a long time, where we had a stronger political systems and a sustained political systems. Like if you take, it may be a communism or the Congress or BJP, whatever be it. If that particular ward has, like every time when you have the political elections, if the same group is winning, then you are safe. But if you have a change in the group, the same solution which may have worked for last 5 years will stop working just because the political dimension has changed, because they don't want to take forward. So how will you train your students and faculty to equip themselves in such a manner when you build the requirements, when you design the system, when we develop or deploy this, how do you make sure all these types of stakeholders you will bring in so that it is resilient to these changes? It is taking that. Otherwise, even though with the wholeheartedly you have done, you will fail after some time. And that after some time is not in our hand. So this major change needs to come in. Even today, there is no way people have brought in the measuring systems. Like if I want to measure culturally where they stand, socially where they stand, politically where they stand, can I come up with an index and then based on that come up with any solution? It is not there. Mapping and indexing or measuring is still not there. So that's why teaching that also becomes. So it needs a lot more work, in-depth work and collaborative work with different education institutions and CSOs to develop along with community champions to develop that module which can be usable on a larger global framework.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manisha. The next question, I would like to just follow up on what Dr. Manisha said. And this question I would direct to Radhika ji. In Amrita itself, because of Amma's vision, there has been a steady presence of the kind of education that you have spoken about And even when the Supreme Court gave an order that environmental studies had to be included in all the curricula, Amrita took it in a very different way. They added the spiritual ecology dimension to it. And so this has always been something that it's been in the minds and the focus of the community in Amrita. But I want to try and connect what Dr. Manisha said along with the presentation that you made, and I have a question. Now, Dr. Manisha said we need to understand the minds of the stakeholders and then design our education accordingly. There is this word stakeholder that people very loosely throw around these days. The word is surprisingly very young. It's only been about 70 years that this word stakeholder originated and is used in the current form of its meaning. But in its simplest meaning, it means someone who stands to lose or gain something. That's a basic definition of stakeholder. So if we now take what Dr. Manisha said, we need to understand the minds of someone who stands to win or lose something, who stands to gain or lose something. Do people really understand long-term what they may lose, short-term what they may gain? Because there's always this thing about short-term pain and long-term gain, short-term gain and long-term pain. You are trying to reach an audience, you're trying to educate not just the students who are there for a degree. Your audience is much broader. So I just want to ask you, and for our audience, what do you feel has been the challenge in terms of helping them understand what they gain and what they lose?
Right. Thank you so much for this question. I was actually very, very happy when I saw Amma talk about spiritual ecology in the same context as I have been experiencing it, and that was kind of like a moment for me, to connect with her deeper also. As far as communities are concerned, it depends, it depends on what communities we're talking about. If these are communities, say in the Braj landscape where we work, and they have grown up in the landscape and they're associated with these stories are a part of their identity, then it is easier for them to understand. But yet the reality is also, on the other hand, that these influences and these powers of which have conditioned them that, oh, they need to make more money, hence let's cut the forest and use the land, are also, these forces are also at play. So there are always people who are willing to, who are, on the same wavelength as we are. And then there are people who are outliers. But thankfully, the outliers are fewer in number so far. I don't know in the future years how it's going to be. So I see the potential because when we look at sacred natural sites, these people have grown up in these landscapes. They have a relationship with these landscapes. So for us, when we discuss the concept of protecting them and all, it comes easier to them. Whereas if I bring this same situation to an urban area, where just very close to where I live, which is in a very urban part of Noida, we actually declared a sacred grove because it was just this patch of land, and everything started from that patch of land actually, because we started to feel a deep connection with it, and we realized it had a very old historical history. I mean, it had history to it, which was mythological, and it had so it was in the definition of sacred groves, it was a sacred grove. It's just that nobody had called it that. So we just started calling it that. So very quickly, there was a community of people who felt the same connection and were calling it sacred grove. And in fact, in the area that we lived, it got famous. Everybody was like, there's an enchanted forest around, isn't there? Like, So I feel like people, it's not as difficult unless there are opposing forces at play of money at stake, which can be in a lot of places. And that's where the struggle lies. So yeah, like I said, it's different from place to place. And you have to just take up the challenge. But there's always in most cases, there's a way out of it. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think I was thinking of asking something for Dr. Vinita, but I think she's left the meeting. So I have a question for Miss Millie, if you're still there.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, there's always this question that comes up in a lot of our meetings, which is that the aspect of scaling up. And you've done tremendous work. And I just wanted to understand what's been your thought in terms of scaling up. Is it something that you should even give importance to, or is it that once an organization has done really good work, they serve as a role model and an inspiration for others, and the scale up automatically happens? Is that, or is it that you would advocate for some strategy for scaling up very actively? What's your thought?
I think, and it's my personal opinion, that we give a lot of importance to, like, a lot of emphasis is given on scaling up, and to an extent I understand the requirement for this, but I also feel that just blindly scaling up really doesn't work. It's not sustainable at all. So like even Radhika mentioned, right, contextualizing it for different different areas. For us also, just Taylor waste, for example, that we are working on, it's in one state it's working, but in other states it's more urban area, and the customers are able to really understand the importance of it, but in some more rural areas it is not working. So if we'll try to scale up just blindly, it's going to be a disaster. So we have to really understand deeply what are the beliefs of those communities that we are working with, and the type of stakeholders that we are working with, and then tweak it. I also feel that there are, for many organizations, when they've done some successful work, there's some bit of it which can be applied everywhere, which is like common across most of the places. And it's good to scale that up, because we have seen that it is working, and there's no point to reinventing the wheel really. So just copying it really works, but not fully copying it, I would say. So yeah, I would say that just contextualizing and changing a bit would be required for scaling up.
Thank you so much. Now, as a conclusion segment, I would like to request one statement from each of the panelists. My request to you is, if we think about what is one actionable takeaway or recommendation that you would like to give to all the members of the audience for this event, that so I again want to emphasize actionable, that we take it to heart and we put it into practice in our professional and personal lives. What Radhika ji so beautifully presented, I've seen this described as cosmovision in a lot of the presentations by the indigenous communities from South America and other places, from North America, South America, and from Asia as well. So that aspect, certainly we have our task cut out in terms of educating ourselves and our communities in terms of embracing this cosmovision, a vision with compassion. So my request to the panel members is, Mr. Boer, he mentioned about intergenerational solidarity. I also have this takeaway from all the C20 events, that what we seek to achieve cannot be achieved by instrumental reasoning alone. We need value rationality, which again, Radhika ji mentioned, Dr. Prema mentioned, Dr. Manisha mentioned, and a lot of the activities from Dr. Vinita and Ms. Millie, all of these have emphasized the value rationality. So what is one actionable takeaway, one recommendation you would like to give to our audience today? And with that, we will conclude. So may I start with Dr. Manisha?
Thank you, Dr. Sriram. So I would go with what Amma has mentioned in her speech at Stanford, where Amma had said that if we take compassion as our first step, and if you use that as to take any decision, then we will be able to move in a positive manner. So to implement in a practical manner, when I look at it, what we lack today is the institutions in any community, they are not interlinked with the community's needs. So how can we come up with a system where whether the educational institutions or the universities or even the government offices, how could we bring them together where they would identify the challenges in a compassionate manner? So how can you bring in the compassion in the people and utilize their compassion to bring in a positive change? That is where we have to work, and for that we have to come up with a model which is measurable, which is also, adaptable in a scaled manner in different cultures. Sriram sir, you are on mute. Nothing we heard from you.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, next, can we go to Radhika ji?
Yes. I would just speak from my heart, and I would say that everybody should spend some time in solitude with Mother Earth. And when you do that, she not only heals you, she also shows you your purpose and your direction in life. And once you start to walk on that path, things will start to come into your life, which will push you further ahead. And so whatever you take up, keep Mother Earth with you. So that's my simple suggestion to everyone.
Thank you so much, Radhika ji. And now Miss Millie.
I think I would, it's more aligned with what Dr. Manisha also mentioned, but I would slightly maybe restructure that is putting like the community that we work with at the center really to solve any issues that they are facing really, right? So with a lot of civil service organizations and social impact organizations that I have seen is that all of us slowly over time start speaking the language of funders and sponsors more than the community. So if we really put communities at the core and start speaking their language, then I think we are bound for success. Thank you.
Thank you. I am not sure if, Dr. Prema, can we have one concluding remark and suggestion from you?
Namashwaya. Yes. So I remember what Amma said also when we were talking about some of the C20 initiatives, and we were talking of culture and practices. And Amma said the new should not stamp out the old. So whatever we have in terms of our ancient Indian culture, and if you look at indigenous practices all over the world, be it Australia, be it South America. So everywhere we had the practice of loving and respecting nature and people and the old value systems. And so that is the most important thing, to preserve that through education, through awareness, through practices. Namaskar.
Thank you, Dr. Prema. So now we come to the end of the session. I am deeply grateful for all our speakers. I think we've had a wonderful, engaging conversation, a lot of really thought-provoking dialogues, a lot of very good summaries of wonderful work done, groundwork done, field work done, a lot of food for thought in taking into policy designs and drafts. And as I said before, so many dimensions were covered. I think Dr. Boer gave a very beautiful landscape and context for the discussions that can take place in future as well. And against that, I think all the presentations sit very beautifully against that landscape. Dr. Manisha gave a very wonderful summary of the work done under Amma's holistic vision. And I think the impact is there for everyone to see, for the world to see. She's also spoken about how, in a very practical way, students in primary, higher education, secondary education, in college, in all levels of education, they can be active contributors in terms of what we are discussing today. They're not just passive beneficiaries, but active contributors. And we had Dr. Yokio, who presented a very good model. And I think that's something that we can all take very seriously. It is not that the content of the model itself would be applicable, as Radhika ji said. It has to be contextualized and designed specific to each community's needs. Definitely that's to be done. But I think it served as a very good starting point. We had Radhika ji, who again, I think she's provided the root and a foundation for all the solutions that I think we would take up for sustainable and resilient communities, because without the values, none of these programs would succeed. And we saw from Dr. Prema some very beautiful examples. I think, as she mentioned, we have to be compassionate in terms of bringing in new by way of digital transformations, by way of technologies, without really kicking out the old in an unhealthy way. And I think there have been some wonderful examples of that. And also that point about making use of the innate wisdom in our indigenous communities. May we never lose sight of that in all our endeavors. And finally, we have Dr. Vinita. She's not here, but again, she had some very good coverage of the projects. I think those projects, again, whether it's with entrepreneurship, whether it's with the self-help groups, whether it's with the environmental education, I think all of these were wonderful illustrations. The video gave a very beautiful overview of their organization as well. One of the things that I really wanted to ask Dr. Libby Johnson, unfortunately, he had to leave a little bit early. And I think water and sanitation, oftentimes they are spoken about in buckets, but really they go hand in hand. It's very important to consider them together. There's a lot of interaction and interplay between the two. And I wanted to get him to share his experiences. I do hope that we can capture it somehow in follow-up reports. So some very good work done in Odisha from him. And then finally, Miss Millie, once again, wonderful work. I know that the audience fully appreciates the tremendous work that you've put in, and we have some nice comments as well from them about the work that you've done. So thank you all for bringing in the vision, the philosophy, the concept, the strategy, the impact assessment, the engagement with all the stakeholders, and inclusivity, equity, and finally, social justice. All aspects, I think, have been covered today very beautifully. Thank you all, and thanks also to the organizing team, Dr. Yogesh and his team. I think there's many that are needed in putting an event like this together. I don't have all the names, but thank you all very much. We appreciate the behind the scenes work in making these wonderful events happen. Thank you all. Have a wonderful, blessed evening. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining.